Try to remember your second birthday. Go ahead. Picture the cake, the candles, the faces leaning in to watch you. You can't. There's nothing there. Just a blank. A smooth, empty space where 2 whole years of your life should be. You were awake for all of it. You laughed, you cried, you learned to walk and to speak and to recognize the people who loved you most. And you remember none of it. You probably assume those years are gone because nothing important happened. But the real answer is far stranger. Those were the most important years of your life, and your brain erased them on purpose. This is called infantile amnesia. It's one of the most universal experiences a human being can have, and almost nobody ever stops to question it. Ask anyone for their first memory, and most people land somewhere around age 3 or 4. Before that, the curtain is down. The man who first named this was Sigmund Freud, back in 1899. He noticed that his patients could rarely recall anything before the age of 6 or 7, and he found it bizarre. Here was the period when a child learns the most, feels the most, changes the most, and it vanishes. Freud thought we were repressing those memories, hiding them away because they were too charged, too raw. He was wrong about the reason, but he was right that something strange was happening. So what is actually going on inside the head of a baby? Imagine being born. Light floods in, sound crashes over you. You have no words for any of it, no categories, no sense of where you end and the world begins. Your brain is taking in a hurricane of information every single second, and it is building itself in real time. A newborn's brain forms around 1 million new neural connections every single second. Let that sit for a moment. Not in a year, not in a day. Every second. Your skull was a construction site, and the workers never slept. Here is the problem. The part of your brain that stores long-term memories is called the hippocampus. It's a small, curled structure deep in the center of your head, and it acts like a librarian, filing experiences away so you can find them later. But in a baby, that librarian hasn't shown up for work yet. The hippocampus is one of the last regions to mature. So for the first couple of years, you were having rich, vivid experiences with no one at the desk to file them. The library was open. The books were pouring in, but there were no shelves. For a long time, scientists assumed that was the whole story. Babies simply can't form memories, they said, so there's nothing to forget. But that turned out to be wrong, and the truth is much more interesting. Babies do form memories. They remember faces, they remember routines. A 6-month-old can learn that kicking their leg makes a mobile spin, and remember that lesson days later. The memories are real. So why don't they last? A neuroscientist named Paul Frankland, working with Sheena Jocelyn in Toronto, went looking for the answer. And what they found flips the entire question on its head. The problem was never that babies failed to make memories. The problem is that babies are too good at making the thing that destroys them. That thing is new neurons. Throughout your infancy, your brain was producing brand new brain cells at a furious rate, especially in the hippocampus. We tend to think more brain cells is always better. But Frankland discovered something unsettling. When a new neuron muscles its way into an existing circuit, it doesn't politely take an empty seat. It rewires the connections that are already there. It disrupts them. Every new cell that joins the network scrambles a little of what was already stored. So picture it. You form a perfect memory of your mother's face on a Tuesday. And then, over the following weeks, thousands of new neurons flood into the same circuit, each one nudging the wiring, overriding the pattern, blurring the signal. The memory doesn't get locked away. It gets paved over. Frankland and his team proved this with mice. Baby mice forget quickly, just like baby humans. But when the researchers slowed down the birth of new neurons in those baby mice, the memory suddenly stuck. And when they sped up neuron growth in adult mice, those adults began forgetting like infants. The link was undeniable. The very process that was building your magnificent brain was quietly demolishing your earliest record of the world. Your memories were the price of admission. To become who you are, you had to forget who you were. But neurons aren't the only thing standing between you and your earliest years. There's a second reason, and it's about something you didn't have yet. Language. Think about how you store a memory. You narrate it. You think in sentences. The party was loud. The dog was scared. I felt embarrassed when I dropped the plate. Memory clings to language. It uses words as hooks to hang the experience on. But a baby has no words. None.
So the experience comes in as pure sensation, raw and wordless, and there's nothing to tie it to. Later, when you finally learn language, you have no way to reach back and grab those early moments because they were never encoded in a form your older mind can read. It's like trying to open a file written in software that no longer exists. A psychologist named Carole Peterson at Memorial University in Canada has spent decades studying children's earliest memories. She found that the boundary of childhood amnesia isn't fixed. Young children can actually recall events from when they were 2 or 3. But as those same children grow older, those early memories quietly disappear, one by one, until they too settle around the familiar wall of age 3.5. The forgetting isn't a single event. It's a slow tide that keeps pulling the shoreline back. And there's one more layer, perhaps the strangest of all. To remember your life, you first need a self to remember it happening to. A newborn doesn't have that. There's no clear sense of I, no understanding that you are a person separate from your mother, moving through time with a yesterday and a tomorrow. That sense of self has to be built, and until it exists, experiences can't be filed as my experience because there's no my to file them under. This is where culture quietly enters the story. A researcher named Wang at Cornell University compared the earliest memories of adults from different cultures. She found something remarkable. People raised in cultures that tell rich, personal, story-shaped narratives about a child's day tend to have earlier first memories. People raised in cultures that emphasize the group over the individual tend to remember less and later. Your very first memory may depend partly on whether the adults around you treated your tiny life as a story worth telling. So the blank in your mind isn't a defect, it's the residue of 3 forces working in once. A librarian who arrived late, a flood of new neurons paving over the past, and a self that hadn't been born yet, in a mind that had no words. Now here's the part that should unsettle you a little. You think you remember your childhood. Most people can summon a handful of early scenes: the yellow kitchen, a fall from a bike, a trip to the sea. But Patricia Bauer, a memory researcher at Emory University, has shown that many of these treasured first memories are not memories at all. They're reconstructions. You heard the story told at dinner, you saw the photograph, and your brain, helpful and dishonest, built a little movie from the pieces and stamped it as your own. In one striking line of research, people confidently described detailed first memories from when they were 1 year old or even younger, ages at which, as we now know, no lasting memory could possibly survive. The memories felt completely real. They simply weren't. So sit with this. The earliest chapter of your story, the years that shaped your fears and your comforts and the deepest grooves of who you are, was written in a language you can no longer read, on pages your own brain tore out as it grew. And yet, those years are not truly gone. This is the quiet twist. You don't remember learning to trust, but you carry that trust. You don't remember being held, but your nervous system remembers the feeling of safety. The specific scenes were erased, the shape they pressed into you remained. You are, in a very literal sense, a memory you cannot access, a story you can't read, walking around in the world, still being told. Every adult you will ever meet is carrying the same beautiful blank. The crying you can't recall, the first words you can't replay, the face you stared at for hours and can no longer picture. All of it gone, and all of it still here, woven invisibly into the person you became. So try, one more time, to remember your second birthday. The cake, the candles, the faces leaning in. You still can't, but now you know why. It isn't that nothing happened there, it's that everything did, and your growing brain loved you enough to let it go.